Thanks for checking into the State of Basketball Podcast, Episode 10. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm here remotely with Jaron Wilt. Each and every week, we're going to be bringing you the news and notes on all 11 Division I schools in the state of Indiana because in 49 states.
It's just basketball.
All right, Jaron. So, we're remote this week, feeling a little sick, just playing it safe, But we're here. We're ready to record, and it's episode 10. We made it to double digits.
Yeah. It was and a lot. I mean, there's the old adage that people who try to start a podcast usually don't make it to 10 episodes. We
Yeah.
did it. We
So
are here.
we are officially on the board, right? Now this is when it really
we've made it,
starts.
right?
Yeah. We're there.
But so I mean, realistically, this week it was a tough week for our guys, right? There was
a lot of losses.
It was a tumultuous. Yeah, that's a very straightforward way to put it. I was going to kind of sugarcoat it a little bit, but yeah, lots of losses.
I'm trying to even think of who went undefeated this week. Purdue and Indiana State.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
They're one of the few teams that even got any wins, really.
Yeah.
But realistically, our power rankings. With that being said, I mean, a couple teams jumped around. I'm gonna switch it up this week. We're gonna go backwards, right? This entire time we've been going 1 through 11. Now we're gonna go 11 through 1. Build a little bit of the suspense for everyone, and really just kind of count down. I think it's a better representation, right? Like counting up to our number 1 team versus down to the number 11 team.
We'll keep you guessing. Keep guessing on who that number 1 team is. It's a tough one to guess. It's tough.
Exactly. I mean, I'm very good about burying the lead, so that's how I'm gonna start doing the power rankings. We're gonna bury that lead. But so based on our week 9 of games power rankings, number 11 was IUPUI. Last week they were number 9, a little bit of a jump, largely due to, like we talked about, the losses that the teams faced this week.
Took a big loss.
Yes. Staying at number 10 is Valparaiso. Southern Indiana, as you can probably guess, they jumped from 11 up to 9 where they currently are. Ball State stayed at 8. Evansville also stayed at 7. Notre Dame, is at the 6th spot.
Had 2 close ones.
Yes, yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it was definitely some close games for them. It was heartbreaking. And then going into our top 5, Purdue, Fort Wayne stayed at 5. Indiana dropped from 3 down to 4, where they currently are. They took a loss that kind of contributed to that. Butler, made that jump. They jumped from 4 up to 3, so they're in our top 3 this week. Number 2, Indiana State. Like we talked about, one of 2 teams that went undefeated this week, and then surprise, surprise, Purdue is at number 1.
Number 1 and number 2 have been rock solid for 7-8 weeks, maybe longer.
Yeah. I don't off the top of my head know what our first few weeks looked at. I know Purdue Fort Wayne was up in the
Purdue was number 2 at one point. Purdue Fort Wayne after like the second week because they went in, or after the first week because they went in upset DePaul, and we were like, look at that.
Yep.
Number 2.
Yeah, so that but Indiana State's been there obviously Purdue's been there since week 1.
Yeah.
Not surprising. They're, by all intents and purposes, probably the based on AP rankings, the number 1 team in the country, but I do think they're the best team in the country. Yeah. And Indiana State is just easily the second best team in the state.
Should be ranked.
That good.
They're the only other team in the state that should be ranked.
I agree. And I'm intrigued to see what the AP does I guess today, Monday, when this episode comes out. AP voters will have their chance to right the wrongs that they've done against Indiana State over the last few weeks, especially with some of the top 25 teams losing this week. But
James Madison lost, so there's an opportunity for a mid-major to slip in there.
Exactly. But let's get into Ball State. Let's kind of talk through these teams. So Ball State, they did go down in KenPom. They are at 284 currently, down from 252 where they were last week. They lost both their games this week. Brings their overall record to 8-6. Their conference record is now 0-2, like we talked about last week. Their first conference matchups were this week, with a loss to Kent State, 82-69, and then they also lost to Central Michigan, 71-65.
Yeah. I mean, we know how this Ball State team handles road environments,
Not
and
well.
Kent State is not a place that you want to start your conference play on the road, especially when you don't play well away from home. Like, that's just tough. Kent State, whether they're top of the conference or not, they're just always a tough team to play. And Ball
Yeah.
State didn't handle it well. I mean, just Kent State outshot them just way better. They had foul trouble for Ball State. It was just tough. It was a tough game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were in foul trouble pretty much from the opening tip, right? I mean, Jalen Anderson picked up 2 fouls in the first 6 minutes. Ben Hendricks picked up 3 fouls in the first 9 minutes, um, which is crazy. Hendricks, so he'd been starting the last few weeks. He only played 8 minutes against Kent State, and about all he had to show for it were those 3 fouls that we talked
Yeah,
about.
it was a
It
tough one.
was it was tough. It was tough to watch, really. I mean, they got dominated in the paint. Um, they lost the rebounding battle pretty handily. It was just there really wasn't a whole lot of positive
Yeah.
from my perspective on this game,
Mm,
and it doesn't help that when you've got foul troubles like that. But
yeah. Jihad had, he got his. He got 23,
mhm.
kind of kept him in it. Anderson did go out with those fouls, but he ended up getting 10 points, 7 boards, and 5 assists. So he was setting people up and, getting them, to their spots. But the bench for Ball State has been a struggle all year,
Yeah, it
and
has.
they got outscored. Their bench got outscored by Kent State's bench, 42-11, and it's just tough. Um, when you
Yeah,
don't
that's
have
not going
anyone
to win
coming
you any
off the bench,
games.
yeah, when you don't have a lot of scoring coming off the bench, it really brings you down. You look at teams like Evansville. You've got Chuck Bailey coming in off the bench and providing some
Hmm.
scoring. You've got people everywhere off the bench that can give you a boost, but Ball State just does not have that right now.
Yeah, and especially with all those, all the foul troubles that they had this game, you need bench production because you're the bench players are going to be playing more for they're going to be playing, some bigger minutes, and when you've got foul troubles like that, you just need you're losing production from starters, and it doesn't help. And really, I mean, it's the bench scoring, that kind of showed up in the Central Michigan game as
Yep.
well, right? Like it was actually worse, really.
Yeah. They're yeah, I don't even know how much their bench scored, but it was not a lot. I mean,
It was two.
yeah.
They had two
And
bench points against Central Michigan.
yeah, so I was at this game. I brought my daughter to this game. We went down, and the first of all, the first thing I noticed was Zane Doty. He
Yep.
was in a boot, so I didn't
Okay.
realize he was out. I assume he was out for the Kent State game, but I can't be sure. I didn't check the thing too closely, but he was out with a boot. So I mean, that's your potentially your backup center who's out, which really hurts. But it just it was like the day. So classes start back again, I think today, and so there were no students there. I mean, the nest was empty almost, so it was tough because they didn't have that home crowd boost, which they usually need.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think
I mean, we talked about. Sorry, go ahead.
This is what Lewis's third loss at home.
Yep. But I want to point out that I'm gonna chalk this loss up to you being in attendance. For those of you who don't know, Adam has seen the Cardinals play twice in Worthen, and on both occasions they have lost. So he
That's my fault.
equates to two of Mike Lewis's three home losses.
Yeah,
So
it's all my fault. I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
he,
Cards.
as a fan of the Cards, as an alumnus of the Cards, I am henceforth banning him from Worthen. Um,
Well, so my daughter wanted to, the thing that she was looking forward to, she likes watching basketball, but the thing that she was looking forward to was the mascot. So she was looking to see Charlie. and she
Hmm.
was looking to see the cheerleaders. So she saw the cheerleaders, loved their halftime show. They were doing some nice stunts and flipping people up, and she loved it. But Charlie was not there. So she was out. She was the whole time just like just looking for the bird, just looking for the bird, and couldn't find him. We were like finding the pictures around the arena, but he wasn't there. So the vibes weren't there. But here's a free throw for you, Jaron. How
Okay.
many students were in the nest in this game on Saturday?
You said it was pretty empty. I'm gonna guess like 10.
Not even two.
Two
Two
students.
students. They had during some timeouts they had like a 3-point contest or 3-point shooting. The one girl got 5 shots. Each one she made was a $10 gift card. She made 0. And then, so that was one of the students who did that. And then the other student did the recliner free throws, and
Oh, yep.
he missed them all too. So the two students participated in the two timeout things. It was just disappointing. We ended up like walking around the arena and sitting in the student section at one point just because we were just getting a different angle. But I mean, they were in the game up until the end. Um, Jihad, I think, had some free throws when they were down 2 or 3, and I don't think he converted. But it was just Central Michigan. Just I think it's out toughed them in this game. Davion Bailey had 21, and the thing that I saw that was most impressive was Jihad had the play of the game. There was like, I don't know if it was a pass to him, but a ball got loose in the lane, probably like 5 feet from the basket, and he dives to pick it up. He picks it up and he looks around and he just yeets this thing out to the 3-point line. Perfect pass to Davion Bailey, who drains the three. I was like, that's the cleanest assist I've seen in a long time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And those are things that the Cards need more of. Not necessarily a pass from the floor, but just spark plays
Yep,
like
the
that. Really.
hustle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the game was the tough thing for me about this game was that Pearson, right? He's should be their leading scorer, and or at least one of them. He was
Yeah,
0 for 5 from the field. He did finish with 10 points because he went from a perfect 10 for 10 from the line. But you got to hit field goals, man.
yep,
That's a big thing that they need, especially when the bench, like we said, isn't doing much. You got to have more production from the starters. So
yeah. So it was a rough one for them, but it was also a rough one for Butler. They went
couple of them, yeah.
yeah, they went 0-2 this week, and they only dropped from 63, or they only dropped 263 from the 60th spot in Ken Palm, and that's because they played St. John's in uh in New
At
York.
Carnesecca.
Yeah,
Yep.
they lost by 16, 86-70. They weren't supposed to lose that bad, but then they were supposed to get blown out by UConn at home, and they lost by 7. So they were competitive in the UConn game, but taking those two losses was just tough. I mean, the loss at St. John's is expected. The loss to UConn, I guess, is expected too, but you're at home. UConn's playing without Donovan Clingan. So, like, if you're in that game and it's close, you got to close that one out because you're going to need that one. Like, that would be a win that would carry them to March, probably.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that's when you just have to. If you can steal one like that, you got it. You got to.
Yep.
It's definitely much needed. I mean, it's the St. John's game. Really, they both teams shot pretty much the same number of field goals. St. John's shot 68 to Butler's 65, and uh, St. John's just had more to fall.
Yeah.
It St. John's shot 50% from the field, Butler shot 40%, and that kind of equates to some of those that 16-point loss.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough start to the Big East because they beat Georgetown and then they lose in overtime at Providence, lose at St.
Mm-hmm.
John's, lose to UConn. But I mean, then they go to Marquette. Like, that's just the Big East, man. It's just no days off. We
Yeah,
said
yeah,
that.
you don't.
So it's like if
And
you have UConn and you're close, you gotta win it. If you're getting Providence close to the wire, you gotta close that out. But DJ Davis has been playing really well lately.
Out of his mind, really.
Played 20, had 25 in the St. John's game, and was 40%. The team was 39. Sorry, the team was 9 for 29 from three, and Davis had 5 of them. So dude's been just lighting it up.
Yeah, I mean, he shot 10, right? Like he was
Mm-hmm.
50% from three, 5 of 10 those are like Isaiah Swope numbers right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Like
seriously.
that's what this team needs.
Yeah.
More of,
Posh,
really.
yeah, Posh only had 11 in his return to St. John's. Kind of stinks, but
Yeah,
that he
that
did.
he's a guy you hope goes out there and just kind of pops off,
Yeah,
especially going back home on a team that didn't want him,
yeah, that
right?
he
So,
literally got told to go to the portal.
yeah.
But Thad got ejected in this game. Said he felt like his guys are being cheated, and he's always gonna stick up for his guys. And that's the kind of energy that I love from a coach. Getting
Oh yeah.
ejected just because you're so mad at a call or whatever it depends. But like if you feel like your players are getting cheated, get ejected every time. I love that.
Oh yeah. I mean, a double tech was it
It was a double tech,
was it
I
an
think.
instant double tech,
I
or
think
was it like,
so.
okay, okay, which I think is even better.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're gonna go in, man,
Yep.
go all in with it.
Yep.
But talking about the UConn game, it's the second half. I mean, a tale of two halves. Butler just could not contain UConn in the second half. I think they dropped 52 or something absurd
Mm-hmm.
in the second half. And I think Butler was winning at half too. They were up,
Yeah.
a handful of points at half, and UConn just showed that they are the defending national champions and went out and
You
called
know.
game.
Yeah. I mean, they're just a great team that's, works really well together. Even without Klingen, they were able to win this. DJ Davis, great again, 22 points. Pierre Brooks was in double figures. Every single game this season, he's been in double figures. So he did that again. Posh
Good
only
for
had
him.
3 points. He had 6 assists, but what really killed him was the 5 turnovers. Like that was really rough for him and just the team. Those turnovers. I mean, UConn's a team that's going to take every single one of those turnovers and they're going to turn that into some points.
Oh
But
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they had a chance late, right? Like there was a moment, and I even texted you about it. Is Butler, they were fighting there, scratching and clawing, and then Cam Spencer just absolutely hit a dagger three, and it was just at that point like he called game, right? Like he
he's
was
a
like,
villain, dude.
yeah,
He's a villain.
he's just one of those guys, and it's I'm glad he's not in the Big Ten anymore,
Yep.
but I think he's even more of a threat at
He's
UConn
a
than he
per-
was
he's a perfect
at
fit,
Rutgers.
man.
So, oh yeah, oh yeah,
I
and
think
it was just good.
Rutgers could use him. That's for sure.
Yeah, they could. Uh, he knew what he was doing though, leaving.
Yeah.
Really, man, this was Butler's first home loss of the season. We've talked about Hinkle magic all season long. There just wasn't enough magic that night, and it's tough. It's also their first loss when leading at the half. So
That's
too
UConn,
little.
man.
Yeah, yeah. But here's a lot of the season, right? We've talked about, Andre Screen versus Jalen Thomas, who should be getting the minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was on Twitter and I saw this little stat. So far this season, Butler has played only 2 5-man lineups more than 40 possessions together.
Right.
Right. So those 2 lineups, the first one, Posh Alexander, you got Davis, Brooks, Telford, Jalen Thomas. That lineup right there has a plus 13.2 adjusted team efficiency margin. Okay. The other
Not great.
lineup, not great. Other lineup, Alexander, Davis, Brooks, Telfort, Andre Screen. They have a plus 55.6 adjusted team efficiency margin.
I think that's pretty definitive.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers don't lie usually. Like it's pretty easy to kind of lie with stats, but like when you have the adjusted efficiency numbers like that, it tells a pretty interesting story to me at least, and it's just wild that that's kind of how the things pan out. And we've been talking about it, like we've been just using the eye test to say, okay, maybe their team is a little better with Screen in there. And I saw this stat, and I was like, oh, okay, well, definitively, yes. The eye test didn't lie to us here.
And who is your guess as to which one of those, Andre Screen or Jalen Thomas, who gets more minutes?
Pretty sure it's Thomas.
Yeah, almost 8 more minutes per game. He's
That's
averaging almost eight
wild.
more minutes. That's got to
So
get
that's
Screen
even
out there
like,
more. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's you got to, especially if you're gonna compete in the conference like that. So I mean, we talked about Butler, a couple tough losses. Evansville also had a couple tough losses. You know, they went down this week in Ken Palm. They're currently sitting at 194, down from 159. Uh, Two tough losses. One against Indiana State, 87-73, and really an even worse loss, I think, to Murray State, 81-59. So they went 0-2 this week. Our conference record is set at 1-3, so not great. Still 10-5.
yeah.
Right, so they won the games, the non-conference games when it mattered. So
They
um,
uh they like surged back in the Indiana State game. They were down double digits, like more than 20 points,
yeah,
and
25 to be exact, really.
they like surged back and got it within like 6 or 7 maybe, or got it within 8, but then
Yep.
Indiana State just kept on sycamoring, I guess, and just finished them off, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Coach Ragland said it best. And he said, our league is really good, and there's a reason Indiana State is the top of it. It starts in transition. I thought we let them get out in transition early, and it really opened things up for them. I'm proud of how we responded in the second half. To be down by 25 and cut the deficit to 8 on the road was a positive for us, and we'll learn from it and get better. I think that's one way to put it. We talked about the drastic improvement Evansville made this year
Hmm.
early on.
I mean, they doubled up their wins from last year already.
Yeah, yeah. So still positive things going on there, you know, and the fact that Ragland is taking this loss and looking at it as a positive note is to me a sign of a great coach.
Yep.
And
And one thing you have to consider with this, I mean, they shot really well from three, 8 of 19, so they were almost 50% from there. And Yassine Toomey has been playing really well. He had 19 points and 10 rebounds, so it's a double double. And they need someone to come and do that. This is his second double double in 3 games, but they're still missing Hummer House. He's still in a walking boot. Don't know when he's coming back. And I mean, that was the guy.
yeah,
He
oh
was
yeah.
the leading scorer. He was the guy that could get you a bucket. You know, is he worth 22 points at Murray State? I don't know. Probably not. But, he keeps you in it for longer. I mean, that game got away from them immediately once it started, that Murray State game.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, you know, it's a bad thing when um, the player of the game isn't even a player,
Yeah.
right? So against Murray State, the center point energy player of the game was the crowd. You know, they had an impressive 7,928 strong in attendance. That's the fifth largest crowd that uh, the University of Evansville has had in the history of the Ford Center being their primary kind of their home court. Uh, but you got to have your player of the game's got to be a player,
Yeah.
right? Like that's
But
that's
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 plain and
huge, I
simple.
think, for the team and the program and the culture, because Ragland was saying after the game, he said it's not a matter of if, but when we revive this program. This is the energy that they need there. So the school and the athletic department are behind the team, and he thinks that these crowds are going to become the normal at Evansville,
And
which
I,
would be
I think that,
huge.
yeah, I mean, I think that a sign of what they're doing already this year is a testament of that, right? Like, and keep in mind this crowd was there were probably not many students, right? Like it's still
Right.
winter break,
They weren't back, yeah.
so you've got almost 8,000 fans, and I don't know the Ford Center's capacity, but it's probably a little over 8,000 considering this is only the fifth largest. There's been four other larger attended games,
Hmm.
but and what the crazy thing is the previous fifth largest was 7,801. So, 127 fewer. And that was in 2015. So, really, like that's a long time
Yeah.
to increase.
almost 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, to increase that many. So,
Yeah,
or really to increase it all.
it looks like their capacity is 8,930. So they were 89% full. So I mean,
Good for them.
if you're, if you're in Indiana, you're already at an advantage to packing your gym, especially
Oh
when it's
yeah,
not overly big. Like, I mean, a place like Farmers is just too big for IUPUI, but like 9,000 seats, that's a great spot for Evansville. Um, but you know, great crowd, but it was a tough game. I mean, Murray State is really good, and they showed that they're really good. Um, but this, fifth largest crowd, we can call it the Gage Bobe game. He went 4 for 4 from three, and he had 13 points. Kenny
good for
Strawbridge had
him.
10, 12, but Gage Bobe, we've been waiting for this, man. We've been waiting for you to just
Dude,
pop
we
off.
from episode 1, our season preview, we talked about your ability to shoot the three ball, and it just took you 14 games to get warm,
But
but
we
you
like
do
it.
you did it when the bright lights were on, right?
Yep.
You did it in front of such a huge crowd. So I guess if you're an Aces fan, start packing the Ford Center.
Yep. Gage
That
Bobe,
way Gage
he shines bright when the
can
lights are
pop off.
brightest.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
turnovers were the name of the game for them, and
Oh yeah,
turnovers were the name of the game for a lot of people this week. They had 18 of them for 18 points off turnovers for Murray State. And Ragland said, when you don't get back and you allow 16 points in transition and get 18 and give up 18 points off turnovers, that's 34 points. I mean, that's more than the game right there. So if you're
yeah,
looking for things that killed them in this game, is defense and turnovers.
yeah. And I mean, even looking at what Evansville did on defense, they turned the ball over. They turned Murray State over 8 times, but only turned that into 2 points. So just absolute huge disparities uh, in that turnover battle.
Yeah. So they're sitting at what, 10-5 right now.
Yep.
Ken Palm has them projected to go 16-15 this year, finishing 7-13 in the league. Here's a free throw for you, Jaron. When was Evansville's last winning season?
I'm gonna guess 2015.
Because they had that big crowd.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
2015, they were 24-12,
Okay.
but they were also 25-9 the year after that. Then they went 16-17, and then the year 2017-2018 was their last winning season, where they were 17-15. So it's been 6 years since they've had a winning season, and Ken Palm has them projected to do it for the first time in 6 years. So Purple Aces, let's steal some on the road here and keep that winning season going.
Yeah. Yeah. They're off to the right foot. And they just have to power through.
Yeah, a team that did not steal one on the road is Indiana. Um, they dropped from 87th down to 91 in Ken Palm. They went 1-1 this week, so they're 11-4 overall, and they're 3-1 Big Ten. So 3-1 in the Big Ten is a great spot to be,
Yep.
but it sounds really weird when you say, "Oh, Indiana won at Michigan." Like, in a regular year, it sounds weird when you say Indiana won at Michigan, lost at Nebraska, and got blown out at Nebraska.
Yeah, that was brutal.
But this Nebraska team is good. This Indiana team is still trying to find their footing and figure out what they're going to be.
Yep.
Xavier Johnson's first game back, and he struggled, had 0 points. The whole
Really,
team really
just
struggled.
yeah. I mean, well, no. I mean, I think the front
The
court.
bigs did well.
Yeah, the front court played well. The guards, though, the starting guards to be specifically, I'm not convinced that they ever got off the plane. Right? They had between Trey and Xavier Johnson, they had 7 combined turnovers with 10 combined points. You just said Xavier had 0, so 10 points from Trey alone.
Gallo, yeah.
5 combined assists between the two, not great. And then you look at their backup guards, Gabe Cups, Anthony Leal, CJ Gunn, combined for 11 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and a goose egg in the turnover column. Like that's just
Yeah, it's not winning play for your point guards.
No,
You
no.
and turnovers were the name of the game in this one. Just like the Murray State game for Evansville, this game, well, they have 19 turnovers for 27 Nebraska points,
Yeah,
and
that's not great.
they let them go 12 for 32 from three. IU's shooting better from three, 9 of 18, shooting 50% in this game. But, I mean, when you give up 27 points off turnover, you're not going to be able to do much. It seriously just felt like they could get no offensive rhythm going. They were just giving the
Yeah.
ball to them and just saying, here you go.
And I'm curious how much this equated to, you know, and I hate the conversation of, oh, it's Xavier Johnson's first game back. They haven't been playing with him for a month. It's there's learning kind of growing pains. I think that is a little bit of the case, but also I don't think that's a 16-point
Yeah, I
case.
think that's
Like
a factor, but I don't think it's like the factor.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
think
I'm
it didn't
sure,
help, I'm sure.
right, and I'm sure going into this game, I mean, Xavier, he played very limited minutes. I think he had
Mm-hmm.
what, 8 minutes? It might have been a little bit more than that, but
Yeah, he didn't play very much in the
he
first and the
didn't play.
second half.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was aware of that. Like I'm sure
Yep.
that Woodson told him, "Hey, you're on a pitch clock, so to speak, in this game." And I'm curious if that played a role in his struggles. If going into it, he's the guy that
Mm-hmm.
like knows that he needs to go out there and make plays for the team. So if he
I got
knows
to
that
get
he's
this in while I'm in here.
right, and that just adds to mistakes when you're trying to force things. So it was not. It was kind of brutal
It kind of
from
feels like,
the Nebraska game.
yeah, it feels like he struggled, and that just kind of just the whole guards were just struggling after that. And I think Nebraska's got pretty good guards. I mean, you knew Indiana was going to lose as soon as they showed what's his face's
Keisei
parents.
Tominaga's
Yeah, as
parents.
soon as his
Yeah,
parents were there, it was like, okay, well, he's going to play out of his mind. But it kind of
yeah,
feels like Woody is playing. He's like, oh, CJ Gunn's playing well. I'm just going to play Leal. Or CJ Gunn's not playing well. I'll just play Leal. Whatever. I'm not even going to mess around with him trying to play. If you're not playing defense, Leal's going in, which I like for Leal, but I hate that it's kind of like oh, this guy's sucking, get on in there type of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Because like
I
in
think that's
the Ohio State game, I don't think Leal saw the floor.
he did not.
So
He did not. That was
CJ Gunn was locked in, and he had like 10 or 11 points. So it's like, okay, seems like there's a direct relationship there.
yeah. But that Ohio State game, man, was I'm chalking it up as the worst sports broadcast I've ever watched in my life. Not the broadcasters, no, the actual
Network,
feed
yeah,
to the TV, and it's almost something you'd expect from an ESPN Plus or a Big Ten Plus, one of the streaming network games,
yeah,
not a Fox
right,
game,
yeah.
right? This was
Like
on
this was just
Fox.
on Fox, not FS1, just Fox.
Yeah, and I'm curious because I usually the way Indiana fans are is they take to Twitter and complain about everything. I really didn't see any complaints about the broadcast, so
Yeah,
I'm wondering if
could have been
you
a
know
local thing.
could it be a local thing? Was it we watch it on YouTube TV? Could it be a connection to that?
Yeah,
I don't know, but I
because
mean,
mine was scuffed too. Mine was skipping all over the place.
yeah, like I was watching it with my family, and I walked to the other room to my office to grab something, and as soon as I walked in here, the whole house starts yelling at me from every room, like, "Stop messing with the internet," because they thought I was, doing something to impact it, and no, it was just the feed from Fox.
Yeah.
So
An interesting tidbit about this game is that this season, teams who were out rebounded by at least 22 were 3 and 218. And IU was the fourth team to win,
make that number
which is
4.
crazy. I mean, they got out rebounded, but they did not turn the ball over. So it was clear what the focus was after that disappointing Nebraska loss. It was like, don't turn. I don't know what he said. Like, if you have more than 8 turnovers, you're doing, 20 miles per turnover or something. But it was like, it worked because they only
Yeah.
turned it over 4
Oh yeah.
times, which is less than Jamison Battle turned it over himself.
Yeah. It was great. And you think about this game, right? Like I was after the Nebraska game and watching the guards play. I was seriously concerned because a lot of people are saying that Ohio State has one of the best backcourts in college,
Yep.
specifically in the Big Ten, but like in college, like their backcourt play is incredible. And it was I was terrified after watching the Indiana guards play against
Yeah,
Nebraska.
because Nebraska's got good
And
guards too.
right, right.
So
So
you expect about the same, right? But
yeah, luckily it was not the case. The guards from Indiana really showed up. Both Xavier Johnson, especially, I think he was
yeah,
outstanding. He played the way that you need him to play if you're
yep.
going to make a run in the conference.
He gives them a different dynamic because you don't have a lot of drivers on this team, and he gives you, a north-south threat who's going to drive the basketball and get in the lane. Gallo added 7 assists, which is huge.
Hmm.
CJ Gunn came off the bench and had 10 points. It was just a lot better, much more cohesive game for this team than the last one was.
Yeah, I mean, after the game, Mike Woodson gave game balls to both Xavier Johnson and Gunn. I don't often see game balls being given to two players,
Yep.
so I think that's well deserved from both of them.
And you
And
definitely don't see it not going to the guy who had led the team in scoring with 23, like Malik did.
right, right. So I think that's a testament to you know what Coach Woodson says to the players in the huddle or in practices, things like that. I mean, talking about Xavier Johnson one more time, I'm just one. He's my favorite player on this Indiana team.
Uh,
I've said it since he transferred. I'm so excited that they have him back, it, and he's playing at this level. I mean, he had 0 turnovers, which he even said that's something you rarely see from me. I'm an
yep.
aggressive guard. And he went on to say, I have to grow up. I grew up tonight. My teammates rely on me to make the right play at the right time all the time, and he did that. We won't talk about the airball free throw that he had.
I love that he was laughing about it.
Yeah, he shot it and he instantly just dropped down and was just like,
Yeah. He was cracking up about it, which
just a
I
way to,
like.
yeah, yeah. And I thought it was great after the game too. Mike Woodson even said, "I let him loose."
Yeah. Which I think, is definitely telling that he was on a minutes restriction or
Yep.
something for the last game. And I think that they both were like, this just can't be what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I I agree. But one little another tidbit that I want to throw in there. The last 2 weeks, our Jimmy Chitwood Player of the Week was Malik Renew, right? Our first back to back, our first repeat in general. Uh, so his last 4 game averages is averaging 24 points, 7.8 rebounds, 3 assists, 63% shooting overall from the field, 66.7 from three, and 77.8 from the line.
Dude's a
Pretty
dog.
impressive stuff going on. You'd like to see that he kept it up with Xavier Johnson back too.
Yep.
Great sign, but even better signs came from Indiana State.
Yes. Our first team
We
that went 2-0 this week. One
yes,
of
yes
two that we're going to talk about.
they went up in KenPom. They're currently at 51, up from 57 last week. Like we talked about, they went 2-0. Big win over Evansville, and then a win over Northern Iowa, 77-66.
And the Northern Iowa one was on the road, so they got a road win.
Yep.
Um, I'm not going to get into it, but this whole week started off with them firing their athletic director, which I don't know. I don't know. Like, there was a whole bunch of stuff going off on
Yeah.
Twitter. I
Yeah.
tried
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
tried to suss it out, and I was like, it happened. I'm not getting into it. I haven't been
Yep.
deep in the sauce like that. But this team's just so well balanced.
Hmm.
You've got Kenton Swope in the Evansville game had 18. Avila and Conwell had 16. Larry had 5, and he added 16. Or he added 6 assists. And this was even like a down shooting night. They only shot 35.5% from 3.
Only.
Yeah, like how many teams can say like, oh, we shot 35% from 3, and that's a bad night? Like, probably just them.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Right.
11 of 31. Uh, sorry. So they were 29 of 60 from the field. Not bad from the line either. 18 of 20. So down shooting night for everywhere but the line. But
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this was actually the first time all season that Indiana State has led the entire game with no lead changes and no ties. Pretty impressive.
it's
Like we
interesting.
talked.
That was an interesting thing to me.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
surprising.
I didn't really expect that. Um, what is also kind of crazy to me, right? So they scored 87.
Hmm.
It's the eighth highest team total this season through their 14 games.
Yeah, they'll
So
hang
they've
100
played
on you.
14 games. Yeah, like that's they say eighth highest when realistically it's the sixth lowest of the it's bottom half of their points scored this year in a single game at 87.
Yeah.
That is just absolutely bonkers to me. But it's I mean, watching them obviously it's not, but it it's just a testament of this team.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that they're 4-0 in conference. There's a reason why they're 13-2, and their only losses came to Alabama when Avila was hurt or
Hmm.
sick, and to Michigan State. So we already talked about the Evansville game a little bit when we talked about Evansville, but the thing that stuck out is Xavier Bledson tied a career high of threes. He had four of them. Um, and they like Evansville made a run in the second half, but Indiana State put them away. So it was a great game, and so was Northern Illinois. And the hero in Northern Illinois game was Jason Kent. He's a guy who doesn't normally put up a lot of stats. He's a hustle guy. He's a guy
Yep.
that is like he'll just do anything on the floor.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, literally anything on the floor you need him to do. You need him to run the point, he'll do it. You need him to play the five, he'll do it. And he doesn't really seem to care whether he puts up points or not. But in this game, he had 24 against Northern Illinois, and he had three of his 7 threes and 14 boards. And like tonight, he showed up on the stat sheet, and that was huge for the Sycamores, especially with
Well,
Avila out with foul trouble again.
yeah. I mean, they had three players finish with four fouls. Avila, like you said, Conwell, and then Xavier Bledson also all had four fouls, which is to me pretty uncharacteristic of this team.
Yeah.
But you know, Jason the door was open for him to pop off, and he took advantage.
Yeah. Um, Avila is interesting because like the one thing he does not do well is stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah.
He just really struggles.
Yep.
Um, I mean, looking at he's fouled out of 2 games. There are 3 games this year. No, that's turnover. Sorry, he's fouled out of none, but he's had 4 fouls in 6 different games this season. And you saw what that did in the Michigan State game. I mean,
Yep.
they played pretty well without him, but when he came back in, they just couldn't get back into a rhythm. Then he went out again, and it just wasn't great. If he can stay out of foul trouble, he's going to be great. The team's going to be great, but if he's out, they'll just throw Jason Kent down there, and they'll just have him, run the five and just go small ball because he's a 6'8" dude.
Yeah.
Like he'll
Yeah.
do anything he needs to do.
Yeah. And it's unfortunately Indiana State did not lead for the entire game. They let UNI lead for a solid 13 seconds to start the game.
Yeah,
So rather unfortunate there. I'll also point out this is probably the worst 3-point shooting night I've ever seen in my life from Northern Illinois or Northern Iowa. Excuse me. Uh, they shot 6.7% from three. That's 1 of 15.
that's well, yeah, that's almost as bad as what was it, Michigan State against James Madison going like 1 for 20 or 1 for 20, shooting 5%.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but it was just that's absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, but I mean that's Indiana State, man. They'll kill
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
But
for
our
sure.
our next team was very
Can't catch a
briefly,
break.
yeah, they were very briefly the second to last team in the country on Ken Palm. They went down from 358 to down to 360. So they're sitting at 0-2 this week. They're 5-12 overall, and they're 1-5 in conference. They lost to Robert Morris, big time.
They didn't lose. They got stomped.
Yeah, 92-48, and then they lost at Youngstown State 65 or 75-65. Just struggling, man. Robert Morris Vincent Brady led the team with 12 and 6 boards. He was 25% of their scoring. The
Yep.
other 25, another 25% of the scoring was DJ Jackson. He had 12 and 5 boards. That was half of their. That was 24 of their 48 points.
Yeah, I mean they were down 20 at half, and then Robert Morris started the second half on a 14-4 run, and that was the game right there. Like it pretty much turned everything to garbage time. Almost it felt like.
Yeah.
Uh, I will say, bright spot for me from this game is IUPUI made more free throws than Robert Morris shot. So
Woohoo!
that's something positive to look at
Yeah.
from the game.
Yeah. I mean, Robert Morris shot 61% from the field. You can't really do much when that's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
But Youngstown State, it felt like I was watching a track meet. Like
hmm
I turned it on and it was just people sprinting back and forth, just turning the ball over. IUPUI turned the ball over, and then Youngstown State would score it or brick it, and then they would run it back down and turn it back over again. It was just absurd. It didn't feel
yeah,
like a
yeah.
basketball game.
I mean IUPUI 28 turnovers, which Youngstown State turned into 33 points, and then Youngstown State conversely had 11 turnovers that IUPUI turned into 13 points. So definitely lost the turnover battle. Jalen Counter still coming off the bench, but he was third highest in minutes. He had played 27 minutes and he was third highest in points with 11. But he also led the team in with 6 turnovers. So
Yeah.
it he added to that 28 total there. But
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know why he's coming off the bench, if he's just not 100% or what. But it's the team. I don't want to say it feels like AAU because they're not even just chucking up shots. They're just, it's like pickup ball is
yeah,
what it feels like half the time because they're just going out there and they're just throwing the ball around willy nilly and turn it over. I mean, it, 28 turnovers.
that's just
That's insane.
wild. Yeah. And I mean, if you told me a team shot 46% from the field, 44% from three, and 62% from the line, and then the team they played against shot 38, 29, and 62 respectively, you'd expect that team with the shot in the 40s to win, right?
Yeah,
That
you would
wasn't the
think.
case here. Like IUPUI led in those three categories, but the volume difference was just absolutely insane. IUPUI took 54 shots to Youngstown State 73. Uh, IUPUI had 18 threes. Youngstown State shot 31. Like that's just it's absurd that that just volume difference.
Yeah, and I mean that's just the turnovers. I mean they just were
Yeah.
not getting it down to their side of the floor and able to do anything. And they would get it close. They'd pass it to somebody in the lane. Oh, ball's gone.
Yeah.
Just every time.
Yeah. It's not going to win you games.
Yeah, I mean they were leading at halftime by 1 or 2, and I saw a Jaguar guy on Twitter tweeted because he was live tweeting the game and everything, and he was like, "I'm almost disappointed that we're winning at half because they're playing so bad, and I don't want them to be reinforced for this horrible play." It's like there's something to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's not a bad take at all.
Um, but let's move on. I want to talk about Notre Dame.
I want to talk about some heartbreak.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the team has rallied and they're playing harder after getting blown out by the Citadel, but they still went 0-2 this week. They're 6-9 overall, and they're 1-3 in the ACC. Um, they lost to NC State, and the heartbreaking thing with this is they led the game for 38 minutes and 48 seconds. NC State led the game for 1 second.
Yeah. That's what makes it so heartbreaking is that 1 second genuinely makes the difference.
Yep, it was just literally right at the end. They were tied. They hit a shot to win it, and like Notre Dame's not going to be competing to even make the NIT this year, but
Mm-hmm.
you can still, give NC State a bad loss,
Right.
and you can
Right.
still like a win like that. Even the Duke game was close. A win like that, is going to help recruiting. It's going to help so many
Mhm.
things.
They're moral victories,
Yeah,
really.
for sure. It's going to help them feel like they're having some success going into next year. But just two tough ones. I mean, Marcus Burton had 18 points in both games, but just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, what's impressive to me though is, you know, in their last three, sorry, I guess in all three of the ACC games that they've played up into through the NC State game, is they've held their opponents to significantly under their season averages
Yep.
in scoring, which is great. But then you just need the offense to help you out, and Marcus Burton did his damnedest to do that. It just you know didn't come to fruition.
So this is the only time I promise I'm ever going to make this comparison, but because only in the scores does it remind me of some of the Archie Miller Indiana teams, because they would keep the opponent to a low score. They just could not score the ball themselves.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, we held them to 48 points. Well, we scored 39. So it's like,
Right.
okay, we just couldn't score
Right.
enough. And so the scores, in a way, remind me of that. The play style, everything else, nothing else reminds me of Archie Miller ball at Indiana. But it's just like, oh, like they held them down, but they just couldn't score. Like Marcus Burton got some, but Shrewsbury maybe hit some threes, and that's the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's in the Duke game too. Another heartbreaker, right? Like they were down. They cut the deficit to 2 points with just under 3 minutes left in the game, and Duke ended up winning by 8,
Mm-hmm.
just because fouling kicks in at that point. But uh, again, they held Duke under their season average in
Yep.
scoring,
Yep.
and
But
just
you know,
couldn't do it.
needed those moral victories, but they seem to have bought into what Shrews said after the Citadel game. So I mean, that's a
Yeah, yeah,
positive.
and I mean, even John Shire said it is. He talked about the culture that Shrews is building, uh, and that he saw that. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that's a huge compliment. You've got a guy like Shire who's all in the Duke culture
Yeah.
and is following what Coach K built, and then he's talking about that in respect to Notre Dame. Like that's at least a little bit of a moral victory, even though,
Yeah.
um,
Even
or
though
at least a
yeah,
testament to the future
it's gonna
of.
build, for the
Yeah.
future for sure.
Yep. Yep.
But
So Purdue Fort Wayne unfortunately took a loss this week. Their first conference loss dropped them 8 spots in Ken Palm. They're currently at 144, down from 136. Still 13-3
yep.
overall, and they're 4-1 in the conference, but pretty sad loss to Wright State, 106-98.
Yeah, still leading the conference though, which is nice. Still in
Yep.
first place. So they got to come out and win some more. Gave up a lot of points though. I
Yeah,
mean, they could
that's
score a lot. We know
uncharacteristic
their
of them.
offense, but they gave up a lot of points. But I mean, their starting five had a ton of points too. Quentin Morton Robertson had 26, Jalen Jackson had 24, Bello had 23, Hadnot off the bench had 11, and Mulder was a perfect 1 for 1. He got his two. Got his two
That's
in.
all they need from him. That's
Hmm.
that's that's all they ask of him. But
Listen,
that's
I've seen him fly a mile
yep.
into the air to grab a rebound and with
Yep.
reckless abandon. So he's providing so much to the team. But
Oh yeah. Oh
14
yeah. But
turnovers is a lot. They average like
yeah.
9.7. So that kind of sucks. And Tanner Holden he's just gonna cook you. You know,
Yep.
he's
Yep.
good.
I mean, they were like you mentioned, Jalen Jackson at 24. It's a career high for him. So pretty awesome. Purdue Fort Wayne, they were down 23 at one point in the second half.
Hmm.
So to rally it back to only lose by 8 is pretty good. Here's a little fun fact for you though. So Wright State has an assistant coach named Dan Beret. He uh, he was a manager for 4 years at IU under Mike Davis, so has some Indiana ties there. He also spent 8 years as an assistant coach for at the then IPFW.
Hmm.
Um, under he spent some time uh, as a GA, as a I think director of basketball operations, and then assistant coach under Dane Fife when he was there, and then under Tony Jacek as well. And for those of you who don't know, Tony Jacek is the head coach that immediately precedes John Kaufman.
Yeah,
So,
he was between Fife and he was between Fife and
yep,
Kaufman, I think.
yep. So Jacek was an assistant under Fife.
Hmm.
Fife left to, I believe, when
Michigan
he went to
State.
Michigan State,
Yeah.
and then Jacek took the head spot. Jacek then hired Kaufman underneath him, as well as Dan Bray was there as well, and then obviously now Kaufman is the head guy there.
And he was
So
at Jacksonville State as an assistant
uh,
too.
he was I think he might have been the head coach at Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Maybe I might be wrong there.
He
He
was
definitely
he was
spent a
down
couple
there.
seasons there.
Yeah, you buried the lead.
Um,
He's also our former Spanish teacher's husband.
yeah, that is correct. That is
That's
correct.
why we know so much about Dan Bure.
That's how we know him. Yep. So, thought that was a little fun fact.
Yeah. But let's talk about our team that also our only other team that went 2-0 this week, Purdue. They
Yep.
stayed number 2 in Ken Palm. They're I don't know. Houston's got to take a big loss or something for
Yeah.
Purdue to beat them because they had a huge win, and then they had a pretty sizable win. They didn't cover, I don't think, in the Illinois game because the line was like 10 points or something crazy. But they beat Maryland at Maryland 67-53, and then they beat Illinois at home 83-78. So 2 good wins. I mean, Maryland was coming off of a 19 game win streak in the Xfinity Center since
Yep.
their loss at home to UCLA.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Coach Willard, if there's any Purdue doubters out there, right? This is what Coach Willard said after the game. By far the best team in the country. It's not even close. You look at their schedule, who they've played, where they've played, best team in the country. But for
Absolutely.
them to come in here and do this to us on our home court, that should be a little bit of an eye opener for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, dude,
Yeah,
they're
I
so
agree. They
good.
are just that good.
And I mean, that they have the best resume. We say it all the time. They have the best resume. Their team is just so good. Again, that Lance Jones pickup is great. He only had 11 in this game and was 3 for 10, but the team didn't shoot super well. But the way they won this game is Edey got his 23 and 12, and Maryland was able to kind of stop Purdue from scoring too much. But Maryland is just broke on offense. They can't do
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
And Purdue just
They
exploited that.
and so here's my question to you though. Do you think that based on this game, Purdue should only beat Indiana by 2
I
transitively?
I don't think that any guesses or assumptions can be made about the Indiana Purdue games because I think that either team could win by 20 against each other, or
Yeah,
either
no,
or
I
it'll be
agree.
a 3 point. It'll probably be a 5 point game this year.
Yeah,
I could also see the way that they're playing Purdue winning by 50. But
right, right.
it's
I just keeping up with the
yeah,
transitive
yeah.
property trend. IU beat Maryland 65-53. Purdue then beat Maryland 67-53.
It's
So
just funny. I saw a tweet that was like, Indiana's offense. It was like a Purdue fan who was like, Indiana's offense looks, so bad or whatever. Just like it's so unfun to watch. I can't wait for them to shoot 90% against us. Like, yeah, that's probably what
right.
will happen. That's probably
Like,
what
and
will
that's
happen.
coming up in a couple weeks too. I
Yep.
think 9 days,
Yep.
I believe. But
Um, Go ahead.
I was going to move on to the Illinois game.
Okay.
If
Yep. But real quick before we move on,
Yep.
Braden Smith had 14, 7 and 6 assists. Dude, he's gonna get a triple double. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
He's
I
just
hope
so
it doesn't
close.
happen against Indiana.
Yeah. It,
But
Imagine Indiana wins, Braden Smith gets a triple double. Like that's like
that's how that game would go, right? Like
that's the monkey's paw. Man, I hope Braden Smith gets a triple double against IU. IU
right.
wins. But I mean, they're just so good. And Painter even said that they didn't even play well offensively in the first half, so they just simplified their game plan and just took care of business.
Yeah, I mean, scoring 67 points is not playing well
Yeah, that is a
for
low
Purdue.
number for Purdue.
Like they're also a team that can score the hell out of the ball.
Yeah.
So
All right, go ahead and move on to Illinois. What were you going to say?
yeah, I was just gonna say that they, big win for them. Obviously, Illinois is kind of in a interesting situation. They're still trying to figure some things out, losing their best player, but Purdue improved to 6-4 all time in top 10 matches in Mackey Arena. So that's pretty good. It's actually better than I thought. Um,
Yeah.
but it was also their first top 10 game in Mackey since 2010.
Yeah, since they
So,
played West Virginia.
yep. Yep. But Trey Kaufman Wren, kid's
MVP.
coming alive.
Hmm.
Right. Like
He heard you.
right. Good. Good. Over the last 4 games, he's averaging 12.8 points, 5 rebounds, almost 2 assists, shooting 61 from the field, 60% from three, 3 of 5, but still. Uh, and he's shooting 83% from the free throw line. So the kid is coming alive.
It's interesting to just think about how his season started because like when you look at the beginning of this season, like he was scoring 5, 9, 1,
I was comparing him
6,
to
8,
Ethan Morton.
6, 3. You know, he's only
Yeah.
had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in double digits. He had 3 against Maryland. So it's like, what can you expect out of him? Well, in this game, he showed you. And I think this is what
Yeah.
Purdue fans thought that he was going to be all the time. I just
Right.
think it's
Right.
so hard to play next to Edie. Not that Trey Kaufman-Ren's not able to do it. Not that he's allowed, like not that he's unable to come alive, but it's just like you got a walking bucket. You have who is going to be the first repeat national player of the year since Ralph Sampson in the 80s. Like he is going to be that. Like
Yeah.
it's just hard to play next to someone like that, especially
Oh,
down
yeah.
in the post. But I mean,
But made a difference that Edie didn't play much this game.
yeah, I
He
mean,
got in foul trouble pretty quickly.
yeah, and I remember texting you because you weren't watching it yet. You were heading home,
Yep.
and as soon as Edie went out with those, he went. He wasn't out with his 2 fouls yet. He was just on the bench resting, and Illinois was like rattled off an 8-0 run, and I was like, oh no, like Edie needs to get back in. Edie goes back in, foul trouble. Immediately gets
Yep.
his second foul, and it's like, oh, Illinois is going to do something. Oh no, Trey Kaufman-Ren's just going to take over the game. He's just going to take over the game. Him and Braden Smith and Lance Jones, they'll just all play super well, and Edie won't really be needed. He'll get his double double, but he won't be needed. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a couple buddies who are huge Purdue fans, and they know that I watch the games as well for the show. And I had just turned the game on, uh, and they both texted me in our group chat that we have, and they were like, "This game makes me stressed. Like
Yeah.
Purdue makes me stressed." And I turned it on, and instantly Purdue, gets offense going after Edie was off the court because at that
Yep.
point he was sitting on the bench with foul trouble, and I instantly turned the game off. I was like, okay,
It's me.
I'm. It was me. It was my fault.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want them to win for the show, but I like the excitement
Yeah.
of. I just I don't want them to lose, but
You want
I
them.
want
You
them to
want them
lose.
to be.
Like
I want them to be tested. You know.
yeah, that's kind of the a
I don't want
better
them to
way, a
get. I
more
don't want to.
eloquent way to put it.
I
Yeah.
don't want them to get comfortable.
Yep.
I want them to, have to fight this one out, which they ended up having to do in the end. Um, but they ended up winning, and they were up 21 at one point. But what was I gonna say? Oh, Lance Jones was playing against his former teammate. What's his name? Marcus Damask,
Marcus Damask. Yep.
who he popped off. Those two both played for Southern Illinois, and their teammate it, they were teammates last year with Xavier Johnson, not from Indiana, but from Southern Illinois, who's like popping off for like 24 points a game this year. So, what would the Salukis look like if they all had stayed together? Would that team just be an offensive juggernaut?
I mean, I have no reason to say no.
But
I have no reason to say no.
I know
But
that I mean, you said it, but no one loves being at Purdue more than Lance Jones.
in history, right? Nobody in history loves being at Purdue more than Lance Jones. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but you led me into it. So at
You
the
got to
beginning of the
talk
second
about it.
half, yeah, at the beginning of the second half, for those of you who don't know, they the paint crew, the Mackey, the Purdue student section, they play Sandstorm, the song, and they have a coordinated dance. It's as a like it's just weird to watch, but it was just so cool seeing Lance was defending the inbound as the halftime clock was counting down, and he's just there in front of the student section. The student section's behind him, the mascot's behind him, Pete, and he's just doing like an abbreviated version of the dance,
Mm,
completely in unison with the student section. And it was just if you just get on Twitter or Instagram and just search Boiler Ball, their official accounts, it's impossible not to see the video. Highly recommend to go watch it. I watched it probably on repeat no less than 100
they
times.
got like over like almost 3 million views or something on it. It was crazy.
And I was
1 million
at
of
least
them.
100 of them. But it was just cool to see, right? Like you don't often see that for a first year guy that transfers like that.
Yeah.
So
So in this game, Edie became the second player in school history to eclipse 1,000 rebounds in his career. He's the 17th Big Ten player to do it. Trace Jackson Davis is sitting at 1143, so he will pass him this year if he averages his average. Um, and Joe Barry Carroll is the leading rebounder in Purdue history with 1,148. So Edie should pass him. My free throw for you is um, Jerry Lucas from Ohio State is the leading rebounder in Big Ten history. How many rebounds does he have?
I want to say something crazy like
No, dude, that'd be
2,408.
listen, if he had here's the thing. If he had I don't think he could play his freshman year because this is in the 60s.
Right.
If he had played 4 years, he would have probably gotten that many. He's in 3 years from 1960 to 1962. He grabbed 1,411 boards. That's 17.2 boards per game. So you could see Edie putting up those numbers if he was a 4 year starter, but like that's a lot of rebounds.
That's a lot of rebounds.
So I mean, Edie won't get to that mark because I do not expect him to come back. Seen him as a projected lottery pick, who knows? But
Right.
he will
Yeah.
not be coming back to Purdue.
I don't think so either.
So he won't get there, but he will be the Purdue's leading rebounder. He could be their leading scorer too. He might. It's
There's
possible.
a path. There's a path
Yeah.
for that as well. But um, Southern Indiana, they went down one spot in Ken Palm. They are at excuse me, no, they went up. They went up one spot. Uh, I had my numbers mixed up. They are at 338 from 339. So they did that with a win and a loss. They won by 2 to Tennessee State, 69-67. Then they lost by 14 to Tennessee Tech, 73-59, bringing their overall record to 5-12 with a 2-2 conference record. Keep in mind they have 2 Division 1 wins. Both of them are conference
Mm-hmm.
opponents. So that is
Getting them when they count.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's no better way to put it.
Yeah, and I mean, keep
The
in mind they did play like the 50th or something like hardest schedule in the non-conference. So
right, exactly. So nothing to, you know, 12 losses at this point in the season does
yeah,
suck, but they are getting the wins when it matters now in conference play so far we've seen.
yeah,
So,
and
the Tennessee go ahead.
sorry, Tennessee State. The thing that I really want to point out is they won this one at the end. I mean, they were kind of trading buckets for the second half, and right at the end, Tennessee State was at the line when they were down 3 because Southern Indiana fouled to put him at the line. Dude hits the first free throw at the end and then intentionally misses the second, and they get the rebound. Tennessee State does. And they put up a shot and put up another shot as the clock is winding down. And the third shot, AJ Smith gets a hand on it and time ran out. So ended with a block, but I mean, just won it in the final seconds. And fought till the end, which is good for them.
Yeah,
Good for that
yeah, that
win.
was. I mean, we were kind of watching it together almost. We
Mm-hmm.
were we were on a phone call and kind of watched it as it all transpired, and it was pretty awesome to see just that last few, defensive uh, uh,
Yeah.
strengths.
Yeah, just holding
Just
on.
to see the defense hold on like that. Yeah. Um, you know, Tennessee Tech game, not it was hard to watch at times. I mean, Jeremiah
Mhm.
Hernandez started the game with nearly all of their offense. He scored 9 of their first 11, and then both teams kind of went cold for a bit in the first half, where they were just scoreless for 5 minutes of basketball with no one scoring
Yeah.
anything. Is
Not a recipe to win.
no, definitely not. But
Uh
it was
the game was won for me at the line. Uh
yep,
Tennessee Tech shot 19 more free throws and they made 17 more and they lost by 14.
yep.
So, I mean, there's the game right there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there were some lead changes and ties, uh, down the stretch, but
Mhm.
then the free throws kick in, and that just kind of
Yep.
it's the way the cookie crumbles.
That's all she wrote.
Um, Valpo, they also went up in Ken Palm. They are 316 up from 319.
They went up with losses
They
even.
yeah, two losses. They lost by quite a bit, 25 to Bradley, and then they lost by 6 to University of Illinois Chicago.
Mhm.
So, just some heartbreak there. Absolutely getting rolled by Bradley.
Yeah. Another turnover game.
Yep.
20
Yep.
turnovers for 24 points for Bradley.
Not a great week for turnovers to occur.
Oh my god, dude, it's just
It just,
absurd.
I feel like every game, every team that lost,
And
I
yet
for the most part,
IUPUI still managed to have the game with the most, 28.
yeah, yeah, which is just absolutely absurd still. But it was, I mean, Darius Diaviero,
Yep.
had 19, right? Something
Mhm.
like that. Almost 20 points, which is a career high for him. His previous high that he's hit twice this in his career, I believe, was 11. So good for him for showing up. I believe he's a freshman,
I believe so.
if I'm not mistaken.
I don't have it off the
So
top of my head, but
I do not either. Um, no, sorry, I'm thinking of Sep. Sep is a freshman
yeah,
who also in the Illinois Chicago game tied his season high. So
good for them.
great, you know, performances for the when you look at the long term success of Valpo. You've got these guys who are, you know, turning up. They're showing positive steps in the right direction. It's just not, I think it's just early in
Hmm.
the time under Roger Powell.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, yeah, it's a rebuild, and they were playing without Stafford in the first game.
yep,
But
yep.
a cool thing was in the Bradley game with 14:03 left to play, a former Valpo football player who's a basketball walk-on, Anthony Sir Ciarani. I'm butchering that. He drilled a three for his first collegiate point, so good for him.
I'm here for it. We love that. But yeah, like you said, Isaiah Stafford missed his second straight game with the injury. He did bounce back against Illinois Chicago.
Hmm.
He led the team um, in scoring. He
And
had four
FGAs,
players. Yep, yep.
20.
That's hey, I'll take it. I'll take it. Someone's gotta shoot the ball. They did have four guys in double digits. Diaviero again had 11. Jackson Edwards had 10, and then Sep had 10 as well. Like I mentioned, that is a season high and career high, uh, tied for at least for Sep. So good for him.
Yeah.
They won the rebound battle.
Yeah, by 11.
Yeah, and it's actually their biggest rebounding win of the season. So
But just, I mean, they went cold for like the last 8 minutes. I don't think they made a bucket, and they needed Stafford to be healthy to be that guy who was just going to get a bucket. But
yeah,
he
yeah. I
wasn't
mean,
there this time.
they had 8 ties and 18 lead changes. Like talk about back and forth.
Yeah, for real.
So, but
Well,
let's
yeah, that about does it for our week recap. Um, so we're gonna move into Jimmy Chitwood. Okay, so for our Jimmy Chitwood Player of the Week, it's an obvious choice. It's someone who stepped up when the time was right. Trey Kaufman Wren for Purdue. He had 23 points in the win against Illinois. He had it on 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and he did it in only 26 minutes. So Edie went out with foul trouble, and he just took the game into his own hands, and he just handled it. I mean, he's the MVP of that game. They don't win that game without him probably because Illinois comes back and makes a surge. But with his 23 points, they were able to keep him, you know, at arm's length and win that game. So congrats to Trey Kaufman-Renn, our second winner from Purdue, but just showing out. We love
Yeah,
it when it's an Indiana guy,
you love it
playing
when
well.
it's yeah when you step up big like that too, almost a point a minute. It's in a game, and he silenced the doubters really,
Yep.
and by doubters I mean me,
Hmm.
right? Like I that's kind of how I was talking about the to start the season.
Yeah, but
But
we know that you were only saying that because you want him to play better.
this is why.
Yep.
I mean,
You were
said it
challenging.
about
I think in one of the episodes you were challenging him to beat Chitwood, if I'm not mistaken.
that sounds like that. You might be right.
It feels right.
It feels like something I would say.
Yeah.
But looking at next week, right? Several fun games, really. We've got starting off on Tuesday, I believe. Indiana travels to Rutgers. Indiana notoriously struggles at the rack. Really,
Yep.
every team struggles at the rack. The rack's
Yep.
a hard place to play for the away team. They are 3-point dogs, which interests me because Rutgers is not great.
They're dookie.
They are, yeah. That doesn't feel right to me.
Hmm.
Um, but we'll see how that plays out. If Indiana can play like they played against Ohio State,
Yeah.
I
This is
I
a
would
game.
say this is a game you bet on
This is a
if we were a
yeah.
betting show.
This is a game that Indiana needs
Yes.
because like it this is probably the easiest road victory, one of the two easiest road victories that you can get on your schedule. And if you win this game and then you go your 2 point favorites at home against Minnesota, if you can win both of those games, you're sitting at 5-1 in the conference. That's where you need to be in
And it
order
only gets
to
tougher too.
make the tournament. So you have to be
Yeah,
5-1 because you're trying to get to be like 12-8. If you're not 12-8,
yep,
I don't know if they make it. So
I
big
agree.
games for them this week. Um, a big game for Purdue Fort Wayne. They go to Youngstown State, so they're looking to bounce back. That's on Wednesday at 6:30, so they're looking to bounce back against Youngstown State. This is a team that just beat IUPUI by 10, so based on the fact that PFW beat Detroit Mercy by 40, who then beat whatever the transitive rules are, they should win this game.
Yeah, yeah. So that's should be interesting. They are dogs. They are 2-point dogs, but PFW should look to pull that off. Butler plays at home against Seton Hall. They have a chance to, I believe, it is their next home game after the heartbreak against UConn. They are four
Yes.
point favorites. Seton Hall again is a team that any one of the Big East can steal a game. It will should be hopefully a bounce back game because Butler does play Marquette on Wednesday as well. So it's Marquette's Marquette. They could lose to anybody on any given day, but they can also blow anyone out. So Butler really needs to steal that Seton Hall game at home on Saturday.
Yeah. And Evansville plays Missouri State at home. They're 1 point dogs, so you got to try and win that game. I don't know if Hummerkaus will be back, but you'll play at Bradley before that. So I mean, this is a winnable game this week. And then another one I was looking at: Indiana State goes to Drake. They're favored by 1, but this is a game you got to have if you want to win the Valley.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
it's a tough test, probably your toughest test yet. That's like not a
Yeah,
game
'cause,
you're
I mean,
supposed to lose.
right. And as a reminder, Drake was projected to win the Valley this
Yeah.
year. So definitely major conference implications for the Sycamores.
Yeah, like Drake is sitting at 12-3 right now. And so they're supposed to finish 13-7 in conference. So you got to win that one cuz they're going to be right up there fighting you for the conference title. But
Yeah.
no Purdue games I'm really targeting because they're supposed to win pretty big at Nebraska, which could be tough because we know how Nebraska plays. But then they're 21-point favorites against the god awful Penn State team. So
Yeah,
no,
it's
the train keeps on rolling this week.
yeah.
It should be no issues.
I'm with you. Next week could be a different story, but
Yeah.
let's talk about what went on in the other 49 states.
Okay. First thing I want to say is they had the most out of pocket graph this week during the IU game. And I was texting you to see if you saw it, but you missed it. But it was the IU game, and it was like, what happened in college basketball this week? And it's like Isaiah Stevens, 2,000th career point. Caitlin Clark, her 14th triple double. Zach Edey, 1,000th rebound. Bryce Hopkins, torn ACL. It's like, bro, why'd you have to throw that on there? Like,
Well,
that does
they
not, one
had
of these is
one.
not like the other.
They had one with Bronny James as well, and I can't remember if I sent it to you,
Yeah, you did.
but it was three stats. It had Boogie Ellis, talking about their I think all three freshmen that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Boogie Ellis, 18 and a half points. His field goal percentages, 3-point percentages. Isaiah Collier, 15 points, field goals, then assists. Then Bronny James, it just says winner and team player,
That's just,
which
I
is
mean,
just like,
that's just they wanted. They're like, we got to put Bronny on here. It's Bronny.
yeah, yeah.
Like, this one was just so out of pocket. It's like, great thing, great thing, great thing. Oh yeah, this guy tore his ACL. He's out for the season. Sorry, but
Yeah, you don't expect to see things like that really.
yeah.
But
Michigan, Juwan Howard. They played Penn State in Philly, and Juwan Howard just let Phil Martelli coach because he's from the Philly area, and they lost to Penn State, which is kind of weird. That whole situation is odd.
yeah, you don't see that often,
Ever,
especially since
ever,
do
ever. You don't do that ever.
you think Jawan, saw it as a, like, he's like, this is a trap game. I'm gonna let Phil, who's been
I'm
doing
not
well
taking this
this
loss on my
season,
resume.
right, right, but didn't expect to see it.
I don't
Also
know.
sucked. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know. I don't. Do we expect to see Juwan back next year?
I, I didn't expect to see Jawan back this year.
Yeah,
But unfortunately, heartbreak occurred. JMU lost. They are no longer undefeated.
America's
Um,
sweetheart.
that's tough. Ole Miss got absolutely destroyed by Tennessee. That leaves Houston as the last unbeaten team.
Yep.
Let's see how long they can keep it going.
Mm-hmm. Cincinnati upsets BYU and Provo. St. John's beats Villanova um, without Bryce Hopkins. He's from Providence. Never mind.
Yep,
They
yep,
had Justin Moore, who tore their ACL last year. Michigan State beat Penn State by 31. Same Penn State team that beat Michigan. Arizona trounced Colorado by 47. And here's a tricky one. Illinois beats Northwestern by 30. Northwestern beat Purdue by 2. So, but then Purdue beat Illinois by 8. So, what does this mean for the transitive rule? I guess the head to
I think
head has
it.
to trump it.
I think it's an anomaly. We just throw it
You
out.
think it's a coin flip game?
Yeah,
It's a coin flip
absolutely,
game. Okay.
absolutely.
And then
So
Texas Tech not upsets Texas because I think Texas was overrated. But I mean, I guess it was. Texas was favored, but they shouldn't have been. So Texas Tech beats Texas. Good for them.
yep. And then next week, just a couple games I want to throw out. Number 23 Providence has been falling in the rankings. They go to St. John's, who we just saw beat Villanova. So the Johnnies are playing hot. They also beat Butler. So
Yep.
that could be interesting. We've got Tennessee. They go to Mississippi State, and then they go to Georgia. So Tennessee should be favored in both those games, but Mississippi State and Georgia are both, playing pretty good basketball right now, and could be interesting.
Yeah. Wisconsin having some tough home games coming up at Ohio State, which Ohio State's going to be looking for some vengeance.
Yep.
A bounce back game at home, and then they go to Northwestern, which I don't really know what to expect from Northwestern. I mean, they get beat by 30 by Illinois. They beat Purdue. I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, but Northwestern they are a product of Boo Buie,
Yep.
and if he shows up, he can, you know, pop off at any given moment. So
Yeah.
kind of see what happens. And then I think on Saturday or maybe Sunday, Oklahoma goes to Lawrence and play Kansas. So
Hmm.
an almost top 10. It could be a top 10 matchup based on the AP polls.
Yeah, I mean
Oklahoma.
Illinois
There is a
lost, so
yeah.
Oklahoma could
There,
move up right
there
there.
is a path that Oklahoma moves up with a couple top 10 losses this
Hmm.
past week. But yeah,
Yeah, that's I mean not a super exciting one next week for the 49 states, but some good games coming up in Indiana. You've got some teams are going to start to separate themselves in conference, and you're going to see hopefully Indiana State stays undefeated. Hopefully Indiana and Purdue can be 5-1 in conference. You know, we want all our Indiana teams to win their conference. It's not. I
yeah,
mean, I guess it is possible. There could be a tie in every, in the Missouri Valley three-way tie. It's not likely because
you're
Valpo
right.
would have to
Yeah.
do some magic, but we always root for our Indiana teams. Obviously, that's the show. So
Yep. Yep. I mean, with that being said, the clock is showing quadruple zeros, so it's time for us to get out of here. Thanks for checking into the State of Basketball podcast. See you next week, and remember, in 49 states,
it's just basketball.